1964. A lonely highway somewhere in Ohio. A truck driver in a standard Mack sees something in his rearview mirror. Something massive. Something silent. It glides past him like a spacecraft, 13 feet tall, bathed in candied metallic red, its turbine engine whining like a jet, preparing for takeoff. He never sees a truck like it again. Neither does anyone else. This was Big Red. Ford built it to redefine America. Then they let it vanish. The 1950s had given America a problem it had never faced before. The Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956 had just authorized the construction of the Interstate Highway System, a 41,000-mile network of controlled access freeways designed to connect every major city in the nation. President Eisenhower himself had championed the project, remembering the grueling 2-month military convoy he had endured in 1919, when a caravan of trucks averaged less than 6 miles per hour across the country on unpaved roads. The new system would cost $100 billion over 10 years and change everything about how goods moved across the continent. But here was the issue. The trucks that would carry American commerce into this new era were essentially the same machines that had struggled through mud and gravel a generation earlier. They were loud, they shook, they broke down, they required constant maintenance, and their diesel engines, while reliable, belonged to an age of limitations. Ford Motor Company looked at those fresh ribbons of concrete stretching from coast to coast and saw something more than roads. They saw an opportunity to build the future. In 1963, deep inside Ford's scientific research laboratory in Dearborn, Michigan, a team led by engineer Roy Lunn began designing something that had never existed before. Not an evolution of the existing truck, a complete reimagining. They called the project the Super Transport Truck, but everyone who saw it would come to know it simply as Big Red. The specifications defied belief. The tractor stood 13 feet tall, so high that the driver sat 8 feet above the highway, looking down at ordinary traffic like a captain surveying the deck of an aircraft carrier. With its tandem trailers attached, the complete rig stretched 96 feet long. Its gross vehicle weight reached 180,000 pounds, making it heavier than almost any semi-truck operating on American highways even 6 decades later. The cab alone weighed 20,000 pounds, built from layers of fiberglass over a steel frame, designed using wind tunnel data that Ford had developed for its aerospace projects. The heart of Big Red was unlike anything the trucking world had ever contemplated. Ford had been developing gas turbine engines since the late 1940s, initially under contract with the United States military for use in tanks, ships, and minesweepers. The 705 turbine that powered Big Red produced 600 horsepower and 955 pound-feet of torque. It featured a 2-stage compression system with air-to-air intercooling, a dual combustion design, and a recuperator that captured exhaust heat to preheat incoming air. The turbine's internal components spun at up to 75,500 revolutions per minute. Exhaust temperatures reached 1,750 degrees Fahrenheit before passing through heat exchangers that dropped them to around 660 degrees at the tailpipe. This was not a diesel engine with a fancy shell. This was aviation technology adapted for the highway. The engine weighed less than a comparable diesel, produced more power in a smaller package, ran smoother than anything on wheels, and could burn almost any combustible fuel, from diesel to kerosene to jet fuel. Ford engineers believed that for sustained high-speed highway cruising, the turbine could match diesel fuel economy while offering reliability that conventional engines could never approach. But the engineering marvel beneath the hood was only part of the story. Step inside Big Red, and you entered a world that truckers in 1964 could barely imagine. The cab featured a full kitchen with hot and cold running water, a food warmer, and a beverage dispenser. A fold-away toilet with a waste incinerator meant drivers never had to stop for anything but fuel. Television set, mounted for the co-pilot, offered entertainment during long hauls. Air conditioning kept the interior comfortable, regardless of the weather outside. The driver accessed the cab through a retractable ladder that extended automatically when the door opened. A panoramic windshield swept down almost to the driver's feet, offering unlimited visibility of the road ahead. This was a mobile command center designed for the superhighways of tomorrow. Ford envisioned a future where coast-to-coast hauling required no overnight stops, where two drivers could trade positions while the truck kept moving, where the fatigue and discomfort that plagued the trucking industry became relics of the past. Big Red was not just a truck, it was a statement that American engineering had no ceiling. Ford chose to unveil Big Red at the 1964 World's Fair in New York City, parking it alongside another vehicle making its public debut that summer, a sporty little car called the Mustang. On August 28, 1964, crowds gathered around both machines, but Big Red drew a different kind of attention. Children stared up at it like they were seeing a skyscraper on wheels. Truckers who wandered over from other exhibits stood in silence, trying to comprehend what they were looking at. Ford executives spoke of a future where turbine trucks would dominate the interstate system, where diesel engines would become as obsolete as the steam locomotive. After the fair, Ford sent Big Red on a cross-country promotional tour that would become the stuff of legend. A 1965 Mercury station wagon served as an escort vehicle, its occupants communicating with the truck driver via two-way radio. The turbine whined across state after state, drawing crowds at every stop, appearing in Life magazine, capturing the imagination of an America that still believed technology could solve any problem. During one passage through an unspecified city, the crew encountered a bridge too low for the massive truck. Rather than turn back, they deflated the air suspension to drop the vehicle 4 inches and threaded Big Red carefully beneath the overpass, dodging the bolts protruding from the bridge's underside. They made it through with only a minor scrape on the roof. The numbers from the road tests validated Ford's ambitions. At sustained highway speeds, fuel economy approached that of conventional diesel trucks. The turbine ran so smoothly that drivers reported feeling like they were floating rather than driving. The engine produced no vibration whatsoever. Ford engineers noted that the power plant could go for oil rig duty as a stationary power unit because of its silky operation. Everything suggested that the turbine truck was not just viable, but superior. By 1966, Ford had advanced the program further, developing the 707 turbine engine for installation in their standard W1000 highway tractors. These production-ready trucks ran supply routes between Dearborn and Toledo, accumulating thousands of miles of real-world operational data. Engineering Vice President Herbert Misch publicly stated that Ford hoped to be the first company to bring a gas turbine engine to the commercial truck market. The future seemed not just possible, but inevitable. What would your grandfather have thought, seeing that machine roll past his window on some Ohio turnpike? What would any American have thought, watching the future glide by at 70 miles per hour, silent as a promise, red as ambition? But the future has a way of arriving differently than we expect. The very characteristics that made the turbine revolutionary also contained the seeds of its destruction. The 705 engine ran hot, catastrophically hot. Exhaust temperatures before the recuperator reached nearly 2,000 degrees. The heat radiating from beneath the truck could soften asphalt on warm days. Parking Big Red required careful consideration of the surface beneath it. The fuel flexibility that Ford celebrated came with a practical nightmare. Gas turbines drink fuel at idle, burning through expensive kerosene while waiting at loading docks or stuck in traffic. The range was limited to roughly 600 miles before requiring a fill-up with fuel that most truck stops did not carry. Unlike diesel, which could be found at virtually every exit on the interstate system, turbine fuel required planning, coordination, and sometimes creative solutions. Then there was the matter of engine braking. Diesel engines provide natural resistance when drivers lift off the throttle, helping control speed on long downhill grades. Turbines offer almost nothing. General Motors, which had been developing its own turbine truck program, eventually solved this problem, but the engineering required was complex and expensive. Big Red relied heavily on its conventional brakes, which generated heat and wore down faster than they should have. The economics proved even more troubling. Manufacturing a turbine engine required precision machining to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. Parts spinning at 75,000 RPM cannot afford the slightest imperfection. Ford's own cost analysis during the 705 development program suggested a manufacturing price target of $20 per horsepower at a production rate of 1,000 engines per year, a figure that was prohibitive by truck diesel engine standards even then. Labor unions raised objections as well. The turbine truck was designed to eliminate stops, to keep moving endlessly across the country with rotating crews. This threatened the entire structure of the trucking industry, from the truck stops that fed and housed drivers to the mechanics who maintained their vehicles to the regulations that governed working hours. Big Red did not just challenge diesel engines, it challenged a way of life. Then came 1970, the year everything changed. The Clean Air Act expanded dramatically, imposing new emissions standards on the automotive industry. Henry Ford II ordered an immediate cessation of Ford's racing programs, cutting funding to Holman Moody, the company's factory-sponsored race team, with a single letter. The turbine truck program, still consuming resources without a clear path to production, faced new scrutiny. Environmental regulations had arrived, and gas turbines, which produced significant nitrogen oxide emissions, suddenly looked less like the future and more like a liability. Big Red was on display at the Omni in Atlanta, a major auto show, when the killing blow came. To meet display requirements, all fuel and oil had been drained from the vehicle. After the show ended, a driver flew down from Detroit, climbed into the cab, and started the engine without refilling the oil. The turbine, spinning at speeds that would destroy any conventional engine in seconds, tore itself apart. Temperatures that should have been moderated by lubricating oil spiked beyond recovery. The 705 engine was destroyed. Ford dispatched a wrecker to tow Big Red back to Detroit. Somewhere on the interstate near Charlotte, North Carolina, the tow vehicle broke down. By coincidence, Holman Moody's facility sat nearby. Ford asked if they could store the crippled truck there temporarily while arranging further transport. Weeks passed, then months. Ford never came back for Big Red. The company was dealing with the fallout from the racing program cancellation, the pressure of new environmental regulations, the economic uncertainty of the early 70s. One experimental truck sitting in a hangar in North Carolina simply fell off the priority list. When Ford's relationship with Holman Moody deteriorated further, the race team's founder John Holman received a letter from Henry Ford II stating that everything in Holman Moody's possession was theirs to use as they saw fit. When Ford eventually called to arrange pickup of Big Red, John Holman reportedly told them to go away, using more colorful language. The truck that was supposed to redefine American industry now belonged to a racing team that had no use for it. For nearly a decade, Big Red sat in the Holman Moody hangar near Charlotte Douglas International Airport, slowly deteriorating. The trailers were separated from the tractor and eventually sold off to different buyers. One went to the Bartle Racing Team. The other allegedly went to Bill Strappa Racing in California, though this has never been confirmed. Neither trailer has ever been located. They likely worked until they wore out, then disappeared into scrapyards, their connection to the famous truck forgotten. In 1978, Holman Moody held a massive surplus sale. Everything had to go. Among the inventory of V8 engines, spare wheels, and racing equipment sat the tractor of Big Red, engineless, transmission removed, paint faded, a relic of a dream that Detroit had abandoned, a private collector who had been fascinated by the truck since seeing it at the World's Fair as a young man purchased it and had it towed backward by another tractor to his shop. Over the next 2 years, he tracked down a 707 turbine engine from a company called Engine Technologies Corporation in California, run by Ivan Swatman, who had purchased Ford's gas turbine technology after the program ended. John Stoppa, Big Red's original caretaker at Ford during the 1960s, flew down to supervise the engine installation. The restoration took 2 years. The owner spent months matching the original candied metallic red paint, repairing wiring, replacing components, returning the truck to its World's Fair condition. When finished, Big Red ran again. It drove again. It was everything it had been in 1964. Then it disappeared once more. The owner, fiercely protective of his privacy, built a custom garage for the truck and parked it there. He never displayed it publicly. He never sold it. For 40 years, the trucking world wondered what had happened to Ford's impossible dream. Rumors circulated. Some said it had been crushed. Some said it was rusting in a field somewhere in the southeast. Ford itself had no idea where the truck had gone. In 2021, automotive journalists finally tracked down the owner through months of investigation. Big Red still exists. It sits in its private garage, fully restored, its turbine engine operational, waiting. The last time it drove under its own power was around the year 2000. The owner has said that someday it might be displayed at the Henry Ford Museum, where it belongs. The tandem trailers that made Big Red complete have never been found. They exist only in photographs and memories, separated from the machine they were built to follow. Today, trucks carry 72% of all freight moved in the United States. They still run on diesel. They still shake. They still break down. The turbine revolution that Ford promised never arrived. The superhighways that were supposed to carry a new kind of American commerce now carry the same machines they always did. Just bigger, just heavier, just more of them. Big Red sits in a private garage somewhere in America, restored to perfection, waiting for a future that passed it by. The men who built it are mostly gone now. The world they imagined never came. Did we lose something when we abandoned that dream? Did we choose safety over ambition, the familiar over the extraordinary? Or did we simply learn that some ideas are too far ahead of their time to survive? If you remember Big Red, if you saw it at the World's Fair or on some highway in 1964, we want to hear your story. Leave a comment below. Tell us what it meant to see the future roll past you, silent and red and impossibly tall. Tell us what we lost when we let it disappear. Subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who remembers when America built things, just to see if they could be built. Some dreams are too big to live, but they are never too big to remember.